All right, welcome to tonight. We're going to go through a bunch of the Bible in Exodus chapter 6 through 11. I don't know if we're going to get all the way through 11. I'm going to try to. It's a lot of ground to cover, and if we don't finish it all, then we'll just catch up next time. Right on. All right, so glad you're here. Glad you're watching. If you're joining us on the interwebs, we're in a different location. The church band is in there practicing some songs or something, so we just moved upstairs to a different room. No big deal. We'll just flex, right? So I'm gonna read us through Exodus 6, and then we're gonna talk about it, and then we'll read some more, and then we'll talk about it, kind of the way I do. And I don't have a lot of visual drawing stuff. There's not a lot of maps and stuff today, but I do have a lot on bradflack.com/Exodus, and so I'll need you guys to go there to follow along with the pictures that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. All right, you ready? Let's do it. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand shall he let them go, and with a strong hand shall he drive them out of this land." Now, I'm going to stop right there. On the inscriptions of the walls of the temples and the pyramids and stuff, you'll see Pharaoh, and he'll have a big, mighty right hand. It's because I'm strong Pharaoh or whatever. But God's actually flipping that narrative on him and saying, with the mighty right hand, not is he going to overpower you, but he's actually going to kick you out. He's going to shoo you away. So what I'm going to do with Pharaoh, and then you'll see with a strong hand, he'll let the people go. He's going to push them out of there. Not just let them go, but he's going to basically shoo them out of the land. Okay. Then God spoke to Moses and said to him, "I am the Lord, and I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob by the name of God Almighty, but by my name, the Lord, Yahweh Jehovah," we talked about last time, "I was not known to them. I have also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their pilgrimage, wherein they sojourned." So he's saying, I'm gonna bring them back to the place where they were just kind of tent camping. But that's going to be their land. I promised them that, and I'm going to fulfill my promise. I've also heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians keep in bondage, and I have remembered my covenant. And if you'll remember, I made this statement. They were crying out, but it doesn't necessarily say they were crying out to God. They weren't praying. They were just like, "Oh, this is so terrible. Oh, this is, the horrible thing." And God heard their crying and groaning and moaning, and he chose to remember the covenant that he had with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and make an action happen. "Therefore say to the children of Israel, I am the Lord," Yahweh Jehovah there, "and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will rid you out of their bondage, and I will redeem you with a stretched out arm and with great judgments, and I will make you to me for a people, and I will be to you a God. And you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who brings you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. And I will bring you into the land which I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and I will give it to you for a heritage. I am the Lord." So right here in Exodus chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, we find the four basic promises of the Exodus. And I've actually got a graphic on bradflack.com/Exodus. You scroll down to chapter 6 through 11, and you'll see there's a graphic that I've created there that kind of breaks down the four basic promises of the Exodus. And the real simple way to tell you the four promises is this. The first one is, I'm gonna set you free. I'm gonna take those shackles off of you. You're gonna be set free. So that's free from a enslavement, a physical bondage. Okay. Then the second one is, it looks like he says it again, but the root meaning of it really goes back to, I'm going to set you free from a slave mindset. Because when you've been institutionalized, when you've been in jail and you're spent 10 years in jail and you come out, a lot of those guys and gals will end up back in there because they don't know how to function in the real world. They've forgotten. They've become institutionalized. Yeah. And so they have to break that mindset. So he's saying, I'm going to set you free, and I'm going to set you free from that mindset, so that you don't say, oh, well, we're just slavery people. We're not really worth anything. We can't do anything. Woe is us. I'm going to make you into a people that are confident. And the confidence is going to emanate from me, your God. Okay? So then we see him saying, I'm going to redeem you with stretched out arm and make great judgments. So the word redeem there means it's like a coupon, right? Think about a coupon. I'm redeeming a coupon. So I'm giving you something so that you can give me a value. Okay? So he's saying, I'm going to give mighty acts that are going to save you from the Egyptians. So he's going to set you free, but he's also going to be doing some stuff to break your slave mindset. And he's going to be doing some actions. Some things are going to happen that will only be something that God can do, and will be the things that would facilitate these two items. And then the fourth promise of the four promises of the Exodus is here in verse 7. He says, I will take you to me for a people, and I will be to you a God. That's the same sort of wording that they would say, they get down on a knee and say, I will take you to be my people. I'll take you to be my bride. Basically, he's asking them to marry him. And we actually see that echoed in the New Testament when it talks about Christ is the bridegroom and the church is the bride. And so this is the very beginning of that happening. And when we get into, we're going to go through the plagues here, and then we're going to see the early part of the Exodus of them leaving Egypt, and then we're going to get to Mount Sinai. And when we get to Mount Sinai, I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to take you as my people. Okay. By that point, the first three promises will be met. Then it would be the fourth one, and that fourth one's going to come in Exodus 19. So we'll come back to that later. All right, y'all following along so far? So he's going to give him, I'm going to give you that land. Now, he doesn't say when. He just says, I'm going to give you that land. And that could be immediately. It could be in a year, a decade, 100 years. I don't know. Because he said he was giving it to Abraham and his descendants, and Isaac and his descendants, and Jacob and his descendants. And they still don't own the land. They're still not possessing the land. So he's still saying, I'm going to do it. We just don't have an exact timeline here. Okay? Verse 9. Moses spoke he said these things, to the children of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses on account of their anguish of spirit for cruel bondage. Remember we talked last time about, they said, you're going to keep making the bricks and the same quota as before, but you're going to have to go find the straw, go out and find the stubble. And so they're upset now. Remember, right before that, he said, look, here's the staff. It's a snake. I'm pulling it back up. Here's I'm doing the Napoleon Bonaparte thing. I'm doing this thing. And God has sent me. He's going to set you free. And they believed and they worshiped. Then he said, Pharaoh, go let my people go. Let God's people go, actually. And Pharaoh was like, get out of here, man. He goes, come on, let God's people go. And he was like, well, as a matter of fact, you're coming here and you're bothering me. So I'm actually going to make their lives harder. And because of that little bit of extra effort that was now put on them, they were faltering in their faith. I mean, that fast, 2 to 3 days. From a high of, I'm going to believe and follow Yahweh Jehovah, to we're just destitute. And that's that slave mindset. Remember we talked about that. That's that slave mindset of, we're saved. Oh, never mind. We're just, we're not worthy of that. And so it says here in verse 9 that they did not listen to Moses on account of their anguish of spirit and for cruel bondage. So they were basically saying, we can't believe you. Like we're not listening to what you're saying anymore because it's hard for us. Okay. Verse 10, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, go in, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the children of Israel go out of his land. And so Moses spoke before the Lord saying, the children of Israel have not listened to me. He's like, I know you're telling me to go talk to Pharaoh, but the people that I'm trying to get out of here, they're not even listening to me. How am I supposed to lead the people out of here who don't even care what I have to say? Well, it's interesting because they don't want to be slaves, but they're not so much wanting to be free that they're willing to put the sacrifice in. And I don't mean sacrifice like a sacrifice an animal. I'm talking about the sacrifice of effort to make it happen. So this is obviously not something that Moses is doing. Moses is not the one. And it's obviously not the people of Israel that's making this happen. Right? So let's see what Pharaoh says. So Moses spoke before the Lord, saying, the children of Israel have not listened to me. How then shall Pharaoh listen to me, as I am of uncircumcised lips? He's basically saying, I am a person who is not worthy to speak these things. Okay. And the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron and gave them a command for the children of Israel and Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the children out of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So then we pause the narrative for just a second here. And we've talked about lineages and genealogies before in our Genesis study. And we're going to go back to that right here. And we'll talk about this in just a minute. These are the heads of their fathers' houses. Verse 14. The sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, the firstborn of Jacob, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. These are the families of Reuben. So here we see, remember those 12 tribes, the 12 sons of Jacob and Joseph's sons in there? And now we're seeing he's listing out these lineages of people in here. And there's two things we're going to talk about that in just a minute. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. These are the families of Simeon. These are the names of the sons of Levi according to their generations. Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the years of the life of Levi were 137 years. The sons of Gershon were Libni and Shimei, according to their families. The sons of Kohath were Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uziel. And the years of the life of Kohath were 133 years. The sons of Merari were Mali and Mushi. And I always, when I see those kind of names, I always wonder if they were twins. This is Mali and Mushi. You could see those kind of being twins, right? Do what? Yeah. These are the families of Levi according to their generations. Now, Amram married Jochebed, his father's sister, and she bore him Aaron and Moses. So now we see why this genealogy is so important. These are the two people who have been called by God to lead the Hebrews out of this bondage. Who are these guys? They're just some guys wandering in from the desert, from the east, from Midian. Like, who do these guys think that they are? Well, not only are they called by God, but in a genealogy looking towards that seed of Eve that we talked about way back early in Genesis. It's going to come through Eve, through Seth, through Noah, through Shem. It's going to come through and so we're continuing this path down through here. And it's continuing to point to these people are qualified to be here because of this genealogy, because of this lineage. It's just like in Matthew 1 when you look at the genealogy for Jesus, and it includes all the warts and farts and bumps and bald heads and everything else in there, because it's pointing to these people are in the lineage, they're qualified, but they are not the one. And even Aaron and Moses, they're the one for this calling, but they're not the ones. Because we know Moses murdered that Egyptian guy. And we see him stumbling on his obedience to God. And so we know that he's not the Messiah, but we see this continuing lineage. And so I like to see this little genealogy kind of popped in here because it reminds us that there's a bigger narrative than just these people in bondage in Egypt. That there's a bigger narrative that's coming in 100,000, 2,000 years, whatever that looks like. There's something coming on the horizon to look forward to, right? So let's see here. Amram married Jochebed, his father's sister. She bore him Aaron and Moses. I'm in verse 20. And the years of the life of Amram were 137 years. The sons of Izhar were Korah, Nepheg, and Zikri. And the sons of Uziel were Mishael, Elzaphan, and Sithri. Aaron took to himself Elisheba, daughter of Aminadab, sister of Nashon, to wife, and she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. The sons of Korah were Aser, Elkanah, and Abiasaph. These are the families of the Korahites. Eleazar, Aaron's son, married one of the daughters of Putiel, and she bore him Phinehas. These are the heads of the fathers of the Levites, according to their families. It was that Aaron and Moses, to whom the Lord said, bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, according to their armies. They are the ones who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring out the children of Israel from Egypt. It was that Moses and Aaron. It's these guys. So it's corroborating their that they are legit, that they're called by God on one hand, but they're also in that lineage.
Right. Yeah.
They're coming from both sides, basically. So let's go to verse 28 of chapter 6. On the day when the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I am the Lord, that's Yahweh Jehovah, so he's using that personal name there. Speak to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, all that I say to you. However, Moses said before the Lord, listen, I'm an unskilled in speech, so how will Pharaoh listen to me? Is Moses not giving up this game or what? He is still fighting and kicking and screaming all the way to the task at hand. Now, how many times have we seen that in our lives? Where we say, God says, I want you to love that person. I don't want to love that person.
Yeah. I don't know that.
I don't. No way. Or
he's really told him several times that I'm not worthy of doing this.
Yes.
You need to look at somebody else.
That's right. And God said, yeah, it's because you're unworthy.
Right, yeah. That's why he's doing it.
That's why I'm using it. That's right. That's right. So let's go to chapter 7 now. Chapter 6, by the way, the highlight there is two things. The 4 promises of the Exodus, which we talked about, and I've got a graphic on the website. And then the genealogy. And we don't need to belabor this genealogy. There's no major, huge landmarks like there has been in some previous genealogies. But this just continues that line that it's going towards something, but these are not the ones. These are not the Messiah, okay? It does corroborate that they're in the lineage so that they are part of the Hebrew people, So chapter 7, verse 1. So the Lord said to Moses, see, I have made you a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother will be your prophet. What he's saying is, you're going to interact with me, and I'm going to make you do things with Pharaoh that only I can do, but you're going to look like the one doing them. Okay? And Aaron's going to be the one speaking for you. So you keep talking about how unskilled in speech you are. I don't care. Aaron is the one talking. Right? So he's like, I'm unskilled in speech, so how will Pharaoh listen to me? He's like, listen, I made you a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron, your brother, will be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and Aaron, your brother, shall tell Pharaoh to send the children of Israel out of his land. So his excuse is still invalid. Yeah. Still invalid here. And so we see in verse 3, but I will harden Pharaoh's heart. And we talked about harden is like it's like a flexing, like a tightening up of his heart. It's furthering his resolve, basically, right? So I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. Remember, we go back here to verse 6 of chapter 6. What does he say? I will redeem you with stretched out arm with great judgments, right? So he's saying here in chapter 7, verse 3, I will harden Pharaoh's heart and multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. Nevertheless, Pharaoh will not listen to you, so that I may lay my hand upon Egypt and bring forth my armies and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt by great judgments. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch forth my hand upon Egypt and bring out the children of Israel from among them. So Moses and Aaron did it, just as the Lord commanded them. So they did. Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. So we see here, this is where we see that Moses is 80 years old. And we know that he was 40 years in Midian. When he ran away, he was 40 years in Midian. So we know what age he was when he left Egypt. He was 40 years old. So the math's pretty easy. 40 years in Egypt, 40 years in Midian, and now here he is back in Egypt at 80 years old. Okay, that's where this comes from. Those numbers come from. So let's go into verse 8 here. Now the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, when Pharaoh shall speak to you, saying, show a miracle, then you shall say to Aaron, take your rod, throw it down before Pharaoh, and it shall become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh, and they did what the Lord had commanded. And Aaron threw down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called the wise men and sorcerers. By the way, the wise men word there is also translated as magi. Have you ever heard that term before? Yeah, that's where magician comes from. It's from magi, and those really started in the previous time of Jesus' birth. But we see the magi there coming from the Persian area, but they had been around for a while, and so this is the people who are interacting. So it says that he also called the wise men or magi and the sorcerers. Then the magicians of Egypt likewise performed their secret arts. For every man threw down his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up all their rods. Nonetheless, Pharaoh's heart hardened so that he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. So it's like, oh, we can do that too. Oh, yours just ate all of ours.
Yeah, but that is pretty cool though, that they were even able to do that with theirs.
I think that there's some definitely demonic activity going on there. It doesn't really talk about that, but that's what sorcery and dark arts and secret arts is messing with.
Pretty creepy though.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy. So that's not even the first plague. That's like the first sign, right? And so we see Pharaoh saying, don't care. Get out of here. The Lord then said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the water, and you shall stand by the river's bank to meet him. So I can almost see him across the river. Pharaoh's coming down to bathe. They like to bathe frequently because being clean was a sign that they were higher class or whatever. Being dirty was a sign that you were not worthy. What? Yeah, you're low-born, low class. So they washed themselves frequently. Remember, I told you already they shaved their hair off because they didn't want to have lice and gnats and stuff. So that's why I do this, because I'm just kidding. So I can see Pharaoh coming on that side, and I can see Moses on this side. And Pharaoh's getting down there to take his bath, and Moses is like, surprise, goes through the bushes and surprises him on the riverbank. It doesn't say that, but it seems like that's something I would do. That's a little bit of Brad interpretation on that. So go down there and surprise him. Yeah. Way to do it. Yeah. It says, go to Pharaoh in the morning as he goes out to the water, and you shall stand by the river's bank to meet him. You must take the rod, which was turned to a serpent, in your hand. Then you are to say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me to you, saying, let my people go, so that they may serve me in the wilderness. But up to this point, you have not listened. And thus says the Lord, in this you shall know that I am the Lord. Indeed, I will strike the waters of the Nile with the rod that is in my hand, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish that are in the river shall die, and the river shall stink, so that the Egyptians shall be weary of drinking the river's water. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, say to Aaron, take your rod and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over their rivers, over the canals, over the ponds, and over all their pools of water, so that they may become blood, and there will be blood throughout all the land of Egypt, both in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. So if they have a wooden container of some sort that's holding water for a horse trough or something, or jars of clay or whatever, it's all going to turn to blood. So Moses and Aaron did so, just as the Lord commanded. And he lifted up the rod and struck the waters that were in the river in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, and all the waters that were in the river turned to blood. Now, I don't know how much you've been around blood, but blood's not the same as water. Nothing can survive in it. That's right. And it's got more viscosity to it. It's like when I.
Have you ever read Dante's Inferno?
Mm-mm.
I mean, you've heard of Dante's Inferno.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it.
Well, when you get to hell, your thirst is so bad that you would actually cut yourself and drink your own blood. It's Dante's Inferno. But you can't quench.
Yeah.
Blood can't quench.
Well, I'm even saying, like, if I get a cut on my arm or something, I can smell my blood. It's not like appetizing,
Unless you're a vampire.
unless you're a vampire, which
Or a zombie.
zombies are for brains, not for blood.
We're
So
safe.
yeah, I'm safe for sure. So
He is what he is.
so the fish that were in the river died. The river stank, and the Egyptians could not drink of the water of the river. Blood was everywhere throughout the land of Egypt. Verse 22. Nevertheless, the magicians of Egypt did the same with their secret arts. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Then Pharaoh turned and went into his house, and he did not concern himself with this either. So all the Egyptians dug around about the river for water to drink, because they could not drink of the water of the river. By the way, and it says 7 days passed after the Lord had struck the river. So it finally flushed out after 7 days.
Nile?
So it's the Nile River. And what they were doing was, it's the water that was at the surface. Anything that was surface water in those vessels and everything else. So apparently they were able to dig into the sand on the embankments, because water finds here. This is I'll draw it for you. So this is the embankment of the river, right? And you've got the water in here. So this would have all been blood. But there's actually water that goes into the soil. Okay, so they were digging here and they were getting water, but this surface was blood. So they were digging little small hand dug wells to try to find water to survive effectively. So after 7 days, it finally flushed out. Okay, on verse 25. So that's chapter 7. We've got the serpent eating the other serpents and becoming a rod again. I wonder if it was any fatter. Like, did it become a fatter rod? Like, he's like this big. Here's my hiking stick is this big. And then it eats the other 3.
Your staff got bigger.
Is my staff larger now? I don't know. It's just, those are the kind of silly things I think about. I mean, that really is inconsequential to the story, but it makes me wonder what happened to the size of his staff, because it ate the other ones. So then we are talking about the blood to the water, and I'm going to actually come back in a little bit here, and we're going to read through something I've written in the past, and I reread it this afternoon in preparation, and we're going to read it together, and I'll read it for you towards the end, but we'll come back to that in just a little bit. Now we're going to chapter 8, verse 1. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord." And by the way, you're going to see this kind of, you're going to see this pattern. I'll kind of erase this real quick. You'll kind of see this pattern where it's like, God says, go see the Pharaoh, say blah, 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 and then he's going to do this, and then Pharaoh hardens his heart. And then God says, go do this, talk to Pharaoh, he's going to do it, and then he's going to harden his heart. And it's going to be the same kind of cycle. So that's why it's going to be kind of repetitive here. So go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go so that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, then I will plague all your borders with frogs. And the river will swarm with frogs, which shall go up and come into your house, and into your bedchamber, and on your bed, and into the houses of the servants, and on your people, and into your ovens, and into your kneading troughs. So frogs shall come upon you, upon your people, and upon all your servants. Now, I remember growing up and playing with frogs in the street. I remember growing up and playing with frogs in the street and stuff. And we were never cruel or anything, but it was like, hey, frog, we'll catch them, whatever. There's a lot less frogs now, and I really can't give you an answer as to why. But in our neighborhood, there's just a lot less frogs. I live like across the street from neighborhood across the street from where I grew up. So it's odd that there's just not very many frogs. What happened to all the frogs? But this is saying that the blood that was in that river, and then it flushed it out. But something about that probably, it's also a miracle, right? So I don't want to take away from what God's done here, but God uses natural stuff to also make things happen.
Man, I got a documentary on this last week on how every plague took place, how a natural plague could have actually made it happen.
Yeah.
Even with the firstborn, a sulfur being released up from the lake that was toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was like, well, why would that be? That had the firstborn just die? In this society at this time, the firstborn would sleep on the roof.
Mm.
And so it rises, right? and that's how I would have killed them. So, a lot of this can be backed up with science.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, go ahead.
No, I like that kind of stuff because he definitely is making things happen, but he already has creation that he can just
Exactly.
tell it what to do and how to go.
How the red tide.
Mm-hmm.
I know we call it blood, but scientists are saying, yeah, this did happen, but they think it was at the bottom of all water sources is iron, sediment, and minerals. Something like an underwater earthquake would have made it come up and it would turn everything red from the iron ore. And you can't survive in that.
Right.
You can't breathe in that.
No.
So the frogs would have left the water source like they would now. You're saying you don't see many frogs now? They're around the lakes and streams and creeks. Now, if you live on a lot, like in Louisiana, everywhere, because everything's low and water, frogs have to have water. But man, this can all be explained with natural wonders that God used. Yeah. Because he had that as his hand.
Yeah. That doesn't cause me heartache or heartburn because I definitely can see God using natural things to make things happen. Now, he could have made it completely, utterly 100% blood too. Like, I don't want to take that away from him too. I don't want to take that away from him either. Yep. So, but yeah, I could definitely see both sides here. So this is not a like Brad saying this is what the Bible says. It's just something to think about, right? We're going through this. So we see here it says that the plague will be all your borders with frogs, and the river will swarm with frogs, which will go into all of the houses, bedchambers, kneading troughs. So they're going to be in everything. All right. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch forth your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers, over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up on the land of Egypt. Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. The magicians did the same with their secret arts and brought up frogs upon the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and my people, and I will let the people go, so that they may sacrifice to the Lord. So here we see the first kind of response from Pharaoh. He's actually responding to it. And he goes, these frogs are not my favorite. I'm not super excited about them. He's not saying, I'm going to let the people go forever. He's saying, I may let the people go sacrifice if you'll get God to get these frogs out of here. Not, oh my goodness, I'm bowing before God because he's done this amazing thing. Yes, go worship. He's saying, we'll see. If he gets rid of these frogs, I'm going to consider doing this. Okay. So Pharaoh, verse 8, Pharaoh called for, verse 9, Moses said to Pharaoh, glory yourself over me. When shall I entreat for you, your servants and your people, to destroy the frogs from you and your houses, and that they may remain in the river only? And he said, tomorrow. So he asked him, when do you want this to happen? He says, tomorrow. And he said, be it according to your word, in order that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God. So Moses is bringing it back to God here, saying, okay, well, as long as you acknowledge that this is a God thing, that's okay. We can do this. The frogs shall depart from you, and from your houses, and from your servants, and from your people, and they shall remain in the river only, which is where they live, right? So I mean, it's like basically they're going to retreat back to their home. Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried out to the Lord concerning the frogs, which he had brought against Pharaoh. Then the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and the frogs died out of the houses, the villages, and the fields. So they gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. I have never had the pleasure of smelling a dead, decaying frog up close.
Have you ever been to a marina?
Yes.
Like an old marina?
Yeah.
That's just a small...
Yeah. But that's what I was going to say is...
A fish camp.
A fish camp where they've got some old guts and stuff.
Yeah, they're always cleaning the fish, and the guts for the birds.
Oh, man. It can be really stinky. So imagine the entire land filled with frogs, and now you've got them piled up on top of each other.
Ugh. Even all the dead fish that are dying in the rivers.
And already the dead fish are dying in the rivers. Now, that being said, remember it says 7 days passed after the Lord had struck the river. So the river eventually flushed that stuff out over time. They died and they started decaying, but the river did flush those out after 7 days. We see that. So the frogs, I don't know exactly how long, but it says, hey, there's frogs on the land. And they're saying, when do you want to get rid of them? Let's get rid of them tomorrow. So then the frogs died and they piled them up. And the frogs died out of the houses. So they gathered them in heaps and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there was relief from the frogs, he hardened his heart. He flexed his heart and did not listen to them as the Lord had said. Oh, man. So he is reneging on his contract, right? A contract says, if you do this, I'll do that.
Well, the other thing was Pharaoh. Pharaoh don't even know it.
Yeah. So he reneged on his contract. They got rid of the frogs, and he's like, yeah, that's nice, but it didn't matter. I'm still going to hold them. They can't go. So here we are in verse 16. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your rod and strike the dust of the land so that it may become gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. They did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod and smote or hit the dust of the earth, and it became gnats on man and on beast. All the dust of the land became gnats throughout all the land of Egypt. Then the magicians tried with their secret arts to bring forth gnats, but they could not. This is a turning point. So there were gnats upon man and beast. Then the magicians said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of God. I mean, these are the people who were going head to head with Aaron and Moses. And they got the snakes, they got the blood, they got the frogs, but now they're saying, we can't do this. Something different here. Nevertheless, remember this ongoing cycle here. Nevertheless, Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he did not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. Verse 20. So the Lord said to Moses, rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh as he comes forth to the water. He's going to go down and take a bath again, right? Or maybe he's going to the bathroom. I don't know what's happening, right? And go to and say to him, thus says the Lord, let my people go. Again, this is starting the cycle again. Thus says the Lord, let my people go so that they may serve me. Otherwise, if you will not let my people go, indeed I will send swarms of flies on you, and on your servants, and on your people, and into your houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground wherever they are. Now, check this out. Verse 22. I will in that day set apart the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, so that no swarms of flies shall be there, in order that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. I will put a division between my people and your people, and tomorrow this sign will happen. So he's already saying, listen, the snakes was kind of here in the little palace, the snakes and the rods. The blood, everybody kind of got stuck with that. The frogs, everyone got stuck with that. These gnats, which we'll talk about a little bit here.
I don't remember that.
The gnats, everybody's got those. Which,
they like to put your eyes.
But the magicians couldn't.
Magicians couldn't do it. Now, the flies, which is like house flies, the flies are only in the Egyptian people, not in the Hebrew people. So now they're watching while all this is happening. Now, what we're seeing here is God is not doing this for the benefit of the Egyptians. I mean, they should have already gotten their attention by now. Yeah. He's doing this to get the attention of the Hebrews. I am here to set you free. I am here to set you from a slave mindset. I'm here to redeem you with mighty acts. I'm going to make you my people. Remember those 4 promises we talked about. So this is where he starts caring for and setting apart those people so that they can be witnesses to his great power and authority, so that they can see, maybe there's something to this God that Moses and Aaron told us about, that we believed in, and then we turned our backs on. Maybe there's something to this. Okay? So, verse 24. The Lord did so, and great swarms of flies came into to the house of Pharaoh, and into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. Which, by the way, I want to tell you something. The blood in the river could have led to an explosion in mosquitoes and lice, which like to eat blood and use it for making their eggs.
Well, a whole chain of events could have taken
The
place.
frogs being piled up and stinking could lead to the flies being a plague. Like, God is not dumb. He created everything by speaking it into existence. He is using things here that it makes sense. A chain of events. Now, there's more to that. I'm going to come to that at the end of tonight. But we see here in verse 25, Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, "Go, sacrifice to your God in the land." So remember in chapter 4 and 5, they were saying, "Can we take our people 3 days journey? We want to go sacrifice and worship God." And he was like, "I'm not letting you. No, get out of here. As a matter of fact, do harder work." Remember that? So now he's saying, "Okay, I kind of don't like what's happening. Sure, Aaron, Moses, y'all go out and go worship." Moses said, "It's not right to do so, for what shall we sacrifice to the Lord our God would be an abomination to the Egyptians." So he didn't say go 3 days. He said, "Go sacrifice to your God in the land." So he's saying, "I'll let you worship, not me or my pantheon of gods. I'll let you worship. Just go do it." And so Moses said, "It's not right to do so. We can't do it here in the land. For what we shall sacrifice to the Lord our God would be an abomination to the Egyptians. And we shall sacrifice what is abomination. If we shall sacrifice what is an abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, and then we will sacrifice to the Lord our God as he shall command us." And we'll talk about, I'm going to come back to that part in a little bit later. Verse 28, Pharaoh said, "I will let you go that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you shall not go very far away. Make entreaty for me." So he's saying, okay, fine. Just go enough distance so that other Egyptians don't see it and get upset. Please just make this go away. He never is saying, "I'm wrong."
Yeah, of course not.
He's saying, just fix it.
Yeah.
Just fix it, get it over with, let's move on with our lives. Okay? So, verse 29, Moses said, "Indeed, I am leaving you, and I will plead with the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people tomorrow. But let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully anymore by not letting the people go sacrifice to the Lord." And Moses went away from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. Then the Lord did according to the word of Moses, and he removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Not one remained. Nevertheless, Pharaoh hardened his heart at this time also, nor would he let the people go.
Okay.
So he has backed out of the contract yet again. I mean, we're really starting to see this.
Yeah, that's what we said we were going to have over and over.
Over and over, over and over. Here we go. Now we're in chapter 9. And that's why we're covering a lot today, because it's a lot of repetitive stuff here, but I think it's important for us to go through it. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and speak to him." You could almost see Moses going like, "Again? Come on, man." Like,
Yeah, he's
going to do the same thing. But there's a reason for this, and I actually we're gonna cover that at the end. Okay. Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and speak to him. Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, let my people go, so that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let them go and continue holding them, indeed the hand of the Lord will be upon your livestock, which are in the field, upon the horses, upon the donkeys, upon camels, upon oxen, and upon the sheep. There shall be a very grievous pestilence. The Lord shall separate between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, and nothing shall die of all that belongs to the children of Israel." So the Lord appointed a set time, saying, "Tomorrow the Lord shall do this thing in the land." And then the Lord did this thing the next day, so that all the livestock of Egypt died, but not one of the livestock of children of Israel died. And Pharaoh sent, and there was not one of the livestock of the children of Israel dead. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, so that he did not let the people go. Now, I want you to remember, let's go back to Genesis. When we talked about this in chapters like 40, 45, 50, somewhere in there, the last couple of chapters, Joseph brought his family into Goshen, and Pharaoh said, "Oh, y'all are shepherds? Oh, well, why don't you handle my flocks too?" Right? So there are some Egyptian flocks in the middle. It's not like it's just this territory. Inside of the territory of Goshen, there are some of Egypt's flocks. And here we see the Israel, the Hebrew livestock is alive, and right next to it could be an Egyptian livestock, and it's dead.
They were probably breeding,
Yeah. I mean, this has got to be, okay, what is happening here?
Because there's finances involved in this.
Yes.
There's more involved. There's money involved.
It's messing up your fun social life when you got gnats and you've got frogs and you can't bathe for a couple of days.
Now it's economical.
But now it's economical. He is shutting down their economy.
Yeah.
He has basically stock market crashed that side of the Egyptian economy. No more meat unless it comes from the Hebrews.
Right, yeah.
Or outside. The fish are all dead in the river.
Right.
So, I mean, they've got to be on their knees saying, Pharaoh, come on, man. For real. This is a problem.
Let him go.
Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Right? Verse 8, chapter 9, verse 8. Then the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron, take for yourselves handfuls of ashes from a kiln, and let Moses toss it toward the heavens in the sight of Pharaoh. I don't know if you pay attention. I don't do basketball, but that one basketball player, he throws the chalk dust up before he. Yeah. That's kind of take the kiln dust and throw it up. Okay. So, and let Moses toss it toward the heaven in the sight of Pharaoh. It shall become fine dust over all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blisters upon man and beast throughout all the land of Egypt. So that dust, it basically threw it up in the air, and then it basically spread out and settled on their skin and caused boils all over their skin. Big pus pockets and blisters and nasty, gross stuff. Okay? So they took the ashes from a kiln and stood before Pharaoh. Then Moses tossed it up toward the heavens, and it became a boil, breaking forth with blisters upon man and beast, whatever beast were left.
More flies. I see more.
Dogs, cats, whatever's left. The magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils were upon the magicians and upon all the Egyptians. So they didn't even try to replicate this one because they were crying and whining about their boils.
It was comical, man.
Yeah, it's like moreover, the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh so that he did not listen to them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses. Now, I want you to notice back up here in verse 9, over all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blisters upon man and beast throughout all the land of Egypt. What's not listed there? Yeah. The land of the Hebrews. So here they are, safe again. Okay, let's go to verse 13. Then the Lord said to Moses, rise up early in the morning. You can see, Moses, let's go, get up. We got stuff to do today. Rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and say to him, thus says the Lord, let's do this again. Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, let my people go so that they may serve me. For I will at this time send all my plagues upon you and your servants and your people, so that you may know that there is none like me in all the earth. For by now I could have stretched out my hand, so that I might strike you and your people with pestilence, and you would be cut off from the earth. But indeed, for this cause I have raised you up, in order to show you in my power, and so that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. Wow, what is he saying here?
Yeah. See, I thought he would just do like, okay, we're going to have another ark. We're just going to eliminate all you guys.
That's right.
We gave you 10 times, and you reversed it every time and said, no, sorry,
yeah.
We're not doing that.
That's right.
So now they're going to do it.
But we see here, God is extending mercy and grace. Remember, mercy is not getting what you do deserve. And grace is getting what you don't deserve. Right. And we see God saying right here in verses 14 to verses 16, for by now I could have stretched out my hand. I could have wiped y'all off the face of the earth. But I didn't. Because indeed, for this cause I have raised you up in order to show you my power, so that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. He wants to keep them alive, right, so that they can see who God is, and maybe, possibly, even themselves become worshipers of the true God. Isn't that something? We hear these amazing stories about, these people in the social media or in books or movies or whatever, talking about God just wants to kill everybody. He's just vengeful, wrathful. He's just waiting to smite somebody with a lightning bolt or whatever the case is. But here we see a man is defying God, and he's having this cycle. And at the same time, in the middle of all that, he says, I could have just, instead of playing this game with you, I could have just snapped my fingers and Thanos
Yeah.
killed you off.
Right on.
You know, man, when I get out of this, well, years ago, I got out of this. You know how we all have enemies and we have people against us? We've all had that. We've got people at work trying to get us fired.
Mm-hmm.
I dealt with this recently at my gym. That's somebody trying to go. Anyway. But you know what? This what he's teaching that makes me realize. Maybe God is using my enemy right now. Maybe God's hardening the heart of my enemy.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know it.
Yeah.
And I don't know it. But God's using them for my benefit, but I just can't see it.
That's right.
Because this is what God keeps hardening Pharaoh's heart.
Yep.
God can be hardening my enemy's heart also. The same thing could be going on.
That's right.
Anyway, that's my little.
No, that's good. So I see great grace and mercy here. When he otherwise could have just been like, you know what? I'm tired of playing this roundabout game. You're done. I'm doing this so that my name may be declared throughout all the earth.
He's just trying to increase his followers. He's trying to
That's right. That's right.
Like us, we're supposed to get followers. He's doing that to Pharaoh.
That's right.
I could have just, and I want you to know that I am the man with my power. You should come to me.
That's exactly right. Verse 17. Still, this is where he chastises. Still, you exalt yourself against my people by forbidding them to go. So he's saying, this is why I haven't wiped you off the face of the earth, because great grace and mercy, I want my name to be worshipped and proclaimed. But even still, you exalt yourself against my people. 17, chapter 9, verse 17. Still, you exalt yourself against my people by forbidding them to go. Certainly tomorrow, about this time, I will cause it to rain a very severe hail, such as has not happened in Egypt since it was founded until now. Send therefore now, listen, I want you to listen to what he says here, verse 19. Send therefore now and bring your livestock, whichever ones survived, right? And all that you have in the field to safety, every man and beast which shall be found in the field and not brought home when the hail comes down upon them will die. So he's saying, I'm going to go do this thing. And what? I'm going to do this thing, and here's how you can be saved. Here's how you can protect yourself. Here's how you can protect. For some reason, if the people were in a cave or in a tent or a home, I don't know. It says brought home when the hail comes down. They found in the field and not brought home. So go back to your house. That if they're out in the field, they're going to die.
Yeah.
He is giving a chance. He is giving them a chance when they don't deserve it. And he feared that the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants and his livestock flee into the houses. But he that failed to regard the word of the Lord left his servants and his livestock in the field. So the Lord said to Moses, stretch forth your hand toward the heavens, so that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and beast, and upon every herb of the field, throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod toward the heavens, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and fire ran along upon the ground. So the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail. It was so severe that there had been none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. The hail struck all the land of Egypt, all that was in the field, both man and beast, and hail struck every herb of the field and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. Now, it says this fire ran along the ground. I'm going to make a Brad assumption, a Brad interpretation here, that there was such a big storm with such hail that lightning caused a grass fire. Okay? I don't see where it says that the hail was on fire. A lot of times you'll see that in interpretations. I don't see that. I just see that it's such a big storm that lightning strikes were going and it caused grass fires as well as hail. And if they weren't protected inside.
It makes sense. We're still dealing with natural wonders.
Correct.
Miracles, but.
Correct. And that's just what I see. It doesn't take from the narrative if it was hail that was on fire. That's still a miracle regardless. And that could have been what it is. I'm willing to admit that. But my interpretation, what I'm reading is, because it says, Lord sent the thunder and hail and fire ran along the ground. Well, what comes with thunder? Lightning. So that's where I'm getting that from. That it's wild grass fires. Okay. Verse 27, chapter 9, verse 27. Oh, she's fine. She sleeps right through it.
Most dogs. Yeah.
No, she's like lights out. So verse 27, then Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron and said to them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous. Are you seeing this is Pharaoh? Let me read this again. Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron and said to them, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked.
Wow,
Entreat for the Lord. Go pray to him, for there has been enough of God's mighty thunder and hail, and I will let you go, and you shall stay no longer. So he's saying,
but what a change. Wow.
so,
No, it's temporary, but still.
I know, but you see here, the hail, he's saying, I could have wiped you off the face of the earth, but I'm giving you a chance because I want you to follow me and I want you to obey what I'm doing here. And here we see Pharaoh, I have sinned this time. The Lord is righteous, and go pray, that he would remove this from me, and I'll let you go. Moses said to him, as soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread out my hands to the Lord, and thunder shall cease, and there shall no longer be any more hail, so that you may know that the earth is the Lord's. The earth is the Lord's, not just Egypt, but the earth is the Lord's. But as for you and your servants, I know that you will not yet fear the Lord God. So Moses is kind of smart-alecky responding to this. Like, I'll handle it. I'll get him to turn it off. I'll get him to flip the switch. But it's not going to make a difference because you guys are not going to pay attention. Now, verse 31, the flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was in ear and the flax was in bud. The barley and the flax are early. They're early crops. The wheat takes all summer to grow. So we know that this is in the springtime. And so just keep that in mind for, because it's the barley. The barley harvest is actually the Feast of First Fruits that we talk about in the Sunday after Easter. So it's Passover, and then it was Friday, and then Sunday was the first day of the week. That was the first day of the Festival of First Fruits. And the First Fruits is the collection of the barley. So the barley was in ear. That means it was ready to get harvested. The flax was in bud. That means it was beginning to flower so it could make seeds later. The wheat, verse 32, and the spelt were not struck, for they grew up later. So the 50 days later is the day of Pentecost, Pentecost, 50 days. And that is the day that the wheat begins to be harvested. So we know that this is in the springtime, at the time when the Passover is celebrated. Like, that's the reason that we know that these times line up. Okay, this is agricultural recognition of the validity of what the scriptures are showing. Okay, so Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh and spread out his hands to the Lord, and the thunder and hail ceased, and the rain was no longer poured upon the earth. However, when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunders were ceased, he sinned yet more and hardened his heart, he and his servants. So he's got his people on board too. They're all hardening their heart now.
Right.
The heart of Pharaoh hardened, and he would not let the children of Israel go, just as the Lord had spoken by Moses. So Moses, you can see Moses going, yep, here we go again.
Here we go.
He knew. We read in chapters 3, 4, and 5, there was already the plan. He already told them it was going to go through this. He already told them ahead of time. So here we go, chapter 10. Then the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart, and the heart of his servants, now his cronies, that I might show these signs of mine before him, in order that you may tell in the hearing of your son and of your son's son what things I have done in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know that I am the Lord. And Moses and Aaron came to Pharaoh and said to him, thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let my people go, indeed tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory, and they shall cover the face of the earth, such that no one will be able to see the earth. What's more, they shall eat the remainder of that which has escaped, that which remains to you from the hail, and shall eat every tree which grows for you out of the field, and they shall fill your houses and the houses of all your servants and the houses of all the Egyptians. Notice, all the Egyptians. And neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen since the day that they were on the earth until this day. And he turned and went out from Pharaoh. He didn't even wait for Pharaoh's response. He just turned and walked away. Then Pharaoh's servants said to him, How long shall this man be a snare to us? Let the men go so that they may serve the Lord their God. Do you not yet know that Egypt is destroyed? I mean, these have got to be the financial advisors to the Pharaoh.
You know, and let's just say 3 events earlier, they wouldn't have to say that.
Right.
But
yeah.
Things are changing, man.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, like the guys that are saying this right now, their home life?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the talks at home, what the wife is telling this? You know how when you got a bad boss, your wife is telling you, I'll go up there and,
Yeah,
you don't tell them I will.
Yeah.
I can see that going on.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm sure there's a lot of pillow talk going on and table talk going on about what's going. Can you kind of?
Are you going to talk to them?
Yeah,
I gotta go up there.
exactly. Egypt is ruined, is what they said, destroyed. So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go serve the Lord your God." But who are the ones that shall go? So these guys show back up, and Pharaoh's like, "Okay, fine. You go and worship, and give me a list of who's going with you. I want names." And Moses said, "We will go with our young and with our old, with our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and with our herds, and we will go, for we must hold a feast to the Lord." Then he said to them, "The Lord," he used Jehovah Yahweh name there, "the Lord indeed be with you when I let you and your little ones go. Beware, for evil is before you. Not so. Go now, you that are men, and serve the Lord, for that is what you desire." Then they were driven out from Pharaoh's presence. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, so that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat every herb of the land, and even all the hail has left." What were you saying?
I don't know if you remember what I said about the locust a few weeks ago, how much they can eat.
Oh,
It's like a flock. What'd you call it? A locust. You know when they all come up. Right?
yeah.
It numbers in around 8 billion, and they can eat like 80,000 acres in like a minute. I put it on the group a few weeks ago. It's
crazy.
It's nuts. It's like land piranhas.
I'll put that on this. I'll put it on Exodus site.
Yeah.
I'll put it there. Okay. So Moses stretched out forth his rod over the land of Egypt. Then the Lord brought an east wind upon the land all that day and all that night. And when it was morning, the east wind brought the locust. The locust went up over all the land of Egypt and settled down all the territory of Egypt. Remember, we talked about this is Egypt, right? They were very grievous. Never before had there been such locusts as they, nor would there ever be such again. For they covered the face of the whole earth so that the land was darkened, and they ate every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees which hail had left. And as a result, nothing green remained there in the trees or herbs of the field through all the land of Egypt. So even though we know that the wheat was coming up, right? And the flax and whatever, anything that's left from the ground level up, anything that's green has been eaten now. Okay? So Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron in haste and said, "I have sinned against the Lord your God and against you. Now therefore, please forgive my sin only this once." Only this once. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
"And entreat the Lord your God so that he may take away from me this death only." So he went out from Pharaoh and prayed to the Lord, and the Lord turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locusts and threw them into the Red Sea. Not one locust remained in all the territory of Egypt, but the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go. I mean, you gotta think.
I can see Moses roll his eyes too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And surely, if you're Pharaoh, almost like an out-of-body experience, you're kind of like, why am I making these terrible choices? Why am I doing this?
His wife would be saying, if that was you, Pharaoh,
yeah.
I see your wife's bread. Come on, man.
Yeah, exactly. So here we are, chapter 10, verse 21. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand toward the heavens so that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, a darkness which may be felt." So Moses stretched forth his hand toward the heavens, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. So the book of Revelation actually talks about darkness coming back on the earth again. And it's a darkness that's so penetratingly dark that it actually hurts people. It actually makes them in pain. And so he's saying that this is a darkness which may be felt. This is the first mention of that in the Bible. I don't know what that looks like. I've been in a cavern before, and they've turned off the lights. I didn't feel any pain.
Yeah, but man, it's documented. I'm going to send it to you. That it backs this up, but with the natural wonders of how that happened.
Okay.
It's so interesting.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's great.
So the darkness which may be felt, verse 22, chapter 10, verse 22. So Moses stretched forth his hand toward the heavens, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt for 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place for 3 days. But all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings.
That would stick out.
That would be a big. Now I don't know if they were able to see the light.
Right, yeah, because of the darkness.
Right, but good night. I mean,
I would think you could.
the Hebrews would definitely see the darkness over there,
Yeah.
and they would have light here. You've got to be, as a Hebrew, you got to be saying, "Wow,
Maybe there's something to
there's
God
something.
about it.
Yeah, there's something going on here. This is something special." So, verse 24, then Pharaoh called to Moses and said, "Go serve the Lord, only let your flocks and your herds be detained. Even your little ones also go with you." But Moses said, "You must also give us sacrifices and burnt offerings so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Our livestock will go with us. Not a hoof will be left behind, for we must take of them to serve the Lord our God. And we do not know with what we must serve the Lord until we get there." But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he said, he would not let them go. So Pharaoh said to him, "Get away from me, watch yourself. Do not see my face anymore, for in the day that you see my face, you shall die." Then Moses said, "As you wish, I will never see your face again." Moses probably was saying, "Thank the Lord, I'm going to not see this guy again." Yes. Chapter 11. We've covered a lot, okay? But chapter 11, well, it's because we have this cycle of kind of repetitive stuff. We're covering a lot of ground. Now the Lord said to Moses, "I will still bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards, he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he shall surely thrust you out from here altogether." Not just let you go, but he's going to push you out. Get on out of here, okay? "Speak now in the hearing of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor and every woman of her neighbor articles of silver and articles of gold." By the way, that translation "borrow" there is a bad translation. It means ask of them. Not borrow like I'm going to repay you. I'm going to borrow a cup of sugar and bring you some back. It's you go and request of the neighbor, every woman of her neighbor, articles of silver and articles of gold. Then the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people. So now they're saying, this Moses guy, there's something to this guy. There's something to him. Okay. Moses said, "Thus says the Lord, about midnight I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne, even to the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, as well as all the firstborn of beasts." So my wife and I were talking about this. I always had been told it was the firstborn sons, but it's actually saying the firstborn. So that means in my house, it would be me and my oldest Bennett. And I don't know.
And that's what this was saying. They said that they would custom to sleep on the roof. And it is. They still do this. Right. That's why the stars were so important back then.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody slept on the roof.
You're laying in there looking at the stars the whole time.
This toxin that could have come up from the rivers.
Yeah.
Would have easily, because the sulfur could kill anybody that was out in the open.
Yeah.
Which would have been the oldest on
Right.
the roofs.
Right. It's very interesting.
It is, man.
So I'm looking at like we looked at my sister's family, and it would be my oldest niece, Afton, but the others were all, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever. And it would be both of my parents were firstborn, so my parents would be gone. I'm looking at my brother-in-law, my sister's brother and his family, and he would be gone, and the oldest daughter would be gone. So you're thinking, oh wow, like out of 20 people, we're going to be 5, 6, 7 people down, so that's like 30%. And it could be less than that percentage wise when you think about if they had a bunch of kids, but it's not a 1 or 2%, whatever. This is a substantial amount of people, and it's men and women and beasts.
Right.
So, verse 5 of chapter 11, as well as the firstborn of beasts. Isn't that crazy? Then there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there has never been, nor shall ever be again. But against any of the children of Israel, a dog will not even move his tongue, against man or beast, in order that you may know how that the Lord distinguishes between Egypt and Israel. Then all these your servants shall come down to me and bow themselves to me, saying, Get out, and all the people who follow you. After that I will go out. And he went out from Pharaoh in great anger. So he told Pharaoh off. Moses did. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh shall not listen to you, so that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. So Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let his children of Israel go out of his land. And we're going to stop there tonight. There's two things I want to talk about. On the website, I have a link to my blog, which I'm actually going to read it. I'm going to get you to look it up here in a second. I'm going to read it off your phone because mine's doing the recording. And then there is another picture that I'm putting on to the website. And the picture is it's a carving in one of the Egyptian buildings, and it is in their artwork they were showing someone who is lighthearted, which we even use that phrase. Someone who's lighthearted means they're not burdened by the burden of sin.
Right.
And if they're not burdened by the burden of sin, then that means they're more holy. I mean, we can make those connections, right? So there's actually a carving that shows the heart of Pharaoh being put on a scale, and on one side is Pharaoh's heart, and on the other side is a feather. And the feather is lower than Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah.
So they were trying to say that Pharaoh is without blemish.
Right. My word, this whole thing. Wow.
So I'm going to put that picture on there for you to look at, and then I'm going to read. Let me get your phone here. So I'm gonna read this here, and what I want to do is I want to share it with you. And I'll cut all this out, so that way it's not dead time.
Chris, I like when you said the iron could have been a natural source for the blood.
Yeah, because it turns it red.
Yeah, it does. I didn't know, but as soon as you said that, I agreed.
Because it's like oxidation takes place, and it let off this ammonia.
Yeah.
It's poisonous.
All right, so I'm going to put a link on the website for this blog post that I wrote 3.5 years ago. But this is talking about the plagues. I'm going to read it for you, okay? But I'll post it on there so you can read it too. And I actually have narrated it on here, but I'm going to read it for this video today. And it's talking about, I've titled it, They, Them, and Us. It's talking about they, the Egyptians, them, the Hebrews, and us today, right? So as we look at the plagues, we'll see how each plague impacts they, them, and us. And so now that you have an idea of who we're talking about, let's get into the plagues. God loaded up Moses with the plagues in a conversation which occurs in Exodus chapter 4. We already covered that. In fact, God even gives Moses the plague of the death of the firstborn son. Remember, we talked about that. And in fact, had Pharaoh repented, this last plague would not have been needed. But we know how it is going to go. Otherwise, this would be called the 9 plagues, not 10. So as we're reading through this, we get to Exodus chapter 7. We see Aaron and Moses arriving in the royal court to request of Pharaoh to let the enslaved Hebrews free. The first event was not actually a plague, but rather a miracle, and it was where he threw down his staff, right? And then the magicians made the staves and ate it, whatever. So we got that. And the first plague called down was turning the Nile and all the water in Egypt into blood. And this would have killed all the existing fish in the river, as well as making both animal and human sick and, frankly, quite scared. This was Jehovah's God's frontal attack on one of Egypt's prime gods. They had multiple gods. And the Egyptian god, Hapi, was the god of the Nile. And this was the entity, in the Egyptian eyes at least, that was in charge of the rising and lowering of the Nile each year, and for the success of navigation of the Egyptians upon the river for both commerce and for control. So I've put a picture of the god Hapi on the website under chapters 6 through 11 for today. So you can see that. He looks like a blue alien. Okay, it's a weird picture, but that's what he was. Pharaoh's magicians and sorcerers, however, were able to replicate this plague on a smaller scale, and his heart was hardened against God. The second plague was that of an infestation of frogs, and while annoying and a bit disconcerting for us, this one may not make a big impact. For the Egyptians and for Pharaoh, however, this would have been a proverbial shot across the bow. Hecate was the goddess of fertility, water, and renewal. And by means of the first plague, God had attacked the very river of the Egyptians' success and its god Hapi. And with this plague, God attacked the what of the Nile, the actual water, and its goddess Hecate. She would have been the reason for the annual success of the harvests. She would have been the one they sacrificed to in order to have children. And she would be the mother of Egypt, as it were. All things would have been had a beginning in and through her, and so I have included a picture of Hecate, and it looks like a frog on the head of a frog head on a woman. Why I would worship that, I don't have any idea. I mean, but I guess you're convinced of whatever you're convinced of, right?
Right.
And again, Pharaoh's magicians and sorcerers were able to replicate this plague on a smaller scale, and his heart was hardened against God. We just read through that. The third plague was released, and this one was directly released on the humans living in Egypt, which included all the classes of Egyptians and the Hebrews as well. The plague was that of lice, or gnats. And while we aren't 100% sure of what type of bug it was exactly, the point of this plague was actually less about the annoying insects than it was as an affront to the Egyptian god of dust named Geb, who was in charge of hosting the humans and all of life on his stage, the planet Earth. So this plague both mocked the Egyptian god, and it reminds us of what the scriptures state in Genesis 3:19, that we are made from dust, and to dust we will all return. So I've included a picture of Geb, and Geb, for some reason, has a bird on his head. Don't know why. This time, Pharaoh's magicians and sorcerers could not replicate this plague, and actually remarked these plagues have the fingerprint of God. Remember we talked about that? But Pharaoh's heart was still just as hard. These first three plagues would have held significance to the Hebrews as well. First of all, the Hebrews were also subject to these plagues, just like the Egyptians, and I think the reason for this is to shake them back to their senses. Remember, they were worshiping,
Right, yeah.
but now things got hard, so, I don't know. And this is to wake them up, get their attention, okay? And although they are all part of the long lineage of the line of Abraham, they had spent well over 400 years in exile in Egypt. And during this time, some of them, most of them, fell away from their relationship with Jehovah God. Others have been trying to maintain their relationship with God, I think, and to keep his commandments, but yet again, here they are slaves. They're not free. And as such, they were not free to worship their own God. Instead, many would have grown up after generations in the land and have either adapted to the gods of Egypt or just simply accepted them as a normal part of their lives. These first three plagues, falling on both Egyptians and Hebrews, is a wake-up call for the Egyptians, especially Pharaoh, to let the Hebrews go, and the Hebrews a call to remember their God. Remember that covenant back with Abraham, right? Even in Exodus, we read that they were crying out because of their affliction, but it wasn't specifically to God. And yet, God heard their cries. This shows a broken and divided relationship between Jehovah God and his chosen nation of Israel. And these plagues would have slapped them out of their stupor in preparation for their exodus. So Moses released the fourth plague, the swarms of flies. Now these flies would actually end up taking down humans and animals. I mean, you've seen cows and animals get eaten up by the flies, and I mean, you imagine swarms so heavy that it actually takes animals down. And then you've actually seen mosquitoes will take animals down up in the Arctic, caribou and stuff, right? So these flies would have actually ended up taking down humans and animals. And by now you've guessed there was an associated Egyptian god. The fly-headed god Khepri was the god of creation and rebirth. And Jehovah God directly attacks Khepri in this plague. And it is the beginning with this fourth plague that we see the Hebrews begin watching from the safety of Goshen, northeast of the royal city where the Pharaoh lived. They won't be subject to the plagues again until the very end. So I put a picture of Khepri in there, and it's an ugly looking dude. It's like the fly.
It's interesting, how God's taking care of their gods.
Yeah. Now he's taking them out one at a time. Okay, so we actually, it's like The Fly, remember, with Jeff Goldblum? Meets Pharaoh is what the picture looks like. So you'll go to the website and you'll see it. This time, no magicians, no sorcerers. Pharaoh does, however, try to negotiate with Moses, which ends up being a veiled attempt for him to remain in control. God doesn't want to compromise with Pharaoh. He wants Pharaoh to change his heart. Now we have arrived at the fifth plague. Moses gives Pharaoh advanced notice and a chance to repent and set the Hebrews free. Yet he does not. This plague ends up killing all the livestock of Egypt except for all which belonged to the nation of Israel. In fact, Pharaoh double-checked and confirmed that all the Hebrew animals were healthy and alive. This plague would have disrupted the transportation, economic, and culinary markets of Egypt, the equivalent of a stock market crashing to nothing. But with all of this, Pharaoh remains hard-hearted. Of course, there's an associated Egyptian god once more, the goddess of love and protection, Hathor. And again, Jehovah God directly embarrasses the goddess and her followers with this plague. And so Hathor is normally normally has horns or antlers, or is holding a cross with the loop on the top of it. Yes. So the sixth plague was boils and sores, and like the last, it only fell upon the Egyptians and their animals. This time the plague directly affected individuals, not just their belongings. God was calling for attention to grab their thoughts and hearts in an attempt to get them to influence Pharaoh to get him to set the Hebrews free. Now remember, God gives him grace. God gives him mercy and says, I'm not wiping you out. I'm doing these things to get your attention. Right? We just read that. Washing in the Nile and keeping clean was of paramount importance in Egyptian society, but by covering all Egyptians with boils and sores, God had made them all unclean. And that was a direct affront to the goddess Isis, the goddess of medicine and peace. By this point, many Egyptians must have been convinced that Jehovah God was the one true God. But since they were not Pharaoh, they were powerless to enact change. We also see that these last three plagues being of significance to the nation of Israel. They would have been slaves to the Egyptians, forced to work for little to nothing and just enough sustenance to keep themselves and their families alive. They were at the mercy of the Egyptians, but with these three plagues, they would have recognized Jehovah God's providence and involvement in their lives, and he would be the one to set them free. He would be the one to provide for them. He would be the one to lead them, and he would be the one to heal them, not Isis. Pharaoh, still hard-hearted as ever, remained unchanged, and Moses releases the seventh plague, hail and fire from the sky. The hail was enormous in size, as had never been seen in the land of Egypt before, and became fire as it hit the ground. The Bible specifically states that the fire and hail annihilated the flax and barley crops. Flax was used for linen and clothing they wore, and barley was used to make their libations, their booze. And the wheat was miraculously left unharmed at this point. This was because God was leaving them a chance to provide bread for themselves if they repented and Pharaoh set the Hebrews free. But the fact that this is the seventh of 10 plagues ought to tell you Pharaoh's decision. This plague once again attacked an Egyptian god. This time it was Nut, the goddess of the sky. Had she been the true goddess of the sky and Pharaoh her high priest, this plague could have been stopped before the destruction was so widespread. But it wasn't. So here's a depiction of Nut, and I'll put it on the website for you. And now we have arrived at the eighth plague. Moses and Aaron approached Pharaoh once more, entreating him to let the Hebrews free. And once more he refused. In Genesis 41, we read about how Joseph, a Hebrew himself, was put in power over all but Pharaoh. He organized a collection of grain during a particularly heavy harvest season. Remember the 7 years of famine after that? Joseph helped to consolidate and increase Pharaoh's power and reach more than ever before. But then we read in Exodus 1:8 that there arose a new Pharaoh, one that did not remember Joseph and his contributions to Egypt. The eighth plague was a release of locusts so large and so heavy that no crops were left to feed the Egyptians. In Exodus 10:2, God tells Moses that Pharaoh will be telling his sons and grandsons about this plague. Jehovah God meant to not let his name be forgotten anytime soon in Egypt. The Egyptian god of storms and disorder or chaos is Set or Seth, but normally they pronounce it Set. And of course, the Egyptians would have been crying out to this god for help as the locusts descended onto every plant that still had leaves, only to see everything be eaten. Set was powerless against Jehovah God. So there's a picture of Set, and he's got a ugly looking like goat head. Again, I don't know why you want these animal-human hybrids, what you're trying to do, but that's what they've got. We're almost through with the plagues now, but God has still not convinced Pharaoh to let the Hebrews go free. Instead, Pharaoh's heart has grown harder and harder. The Pharaoh was worshipped as the end-all, be-all of the Egyptian pantheon. Only second behind him was the sun, and this is who Jehovah God took on next. Moses cast a darkness onto the land of Egypt, but remember, only over the Egyptians, as the Hebrews were not subject to plagues 4 through 9. The darkness was so dark and dank that it could be not only seen, but felt. This went beyond a simple eclipse, as it needed to be a dagger through the heart of the sun worshippers and the god of the sun, Ra. So here's a picture of Ra, and he's got a falcon head with a sun on top of him. The last 3 plagues would have decimated the remaining strength of the Egyptians. Pharaoh had to fulfill the role of cosmic leader and would not relent to Jehovah God's pressure. God wasn't even necessarily asking for Pharaoh to step down or stop worshiping his false gods. He wanted Pharaoh to let his people and the nation of Israel free. These last 3 plagues were meant to show Jehovah's omnipotence, his exclusive power, that only he was able to do these amazing and awe-inspiring plagues. And the nation of Israel would have taken note of this and would have gained confidence that the God who chose them would indeed be fully capable of redeeming them. If not yet, then shortly. In fact, now would be a good time for you to read. It's in the blog. You'll read it. It's going back to another one. I'm talking about the 4 promises, which we talked about today. So you have refreshed your memory on the 4 promises of Exodus. Let's get back to the showdown between Jehovah, God, and Pharaoh. God tells Moses to prepare the people of Israel to get out of Dodge. He even instructs them to prepare to ask the Egyptians for their precious metals and all the treasures of Egypt as they leave the land. That is, all the increase brought upon Egypt on the backs of the Hebrews and shall be theirs as they leave the land. Pharaoh was thought to be the highest manifestation of any Egyptian god. In fact, he was considered to be the son of Ra, the sun god, in the flesh. And as it turns out, his selfishness will end up killing the firstborn of all Egypt. The 10th plague, indeed, did break the resilience of Pharaoh, but it also showed that Pharaoh's selfish actions killed many, and his son would indeed die. We'll talk about that next week when we go through the Passover. I'm going to stop there, but there's a depiction of Pharaoh there. But if you get a chance, make sure you read through the whole thing and finish it at the end, especially after next week's lesson. And so that's what we have for tonight. I hope that you got a new appreciation and a deeper understanding of the plagues and why specifically blood in the river and why specifically frogs and why specifically gnats and flies and all these things. He was sniping the Egyptian gods and goddesses one at a time, taking them out. He was basically saying, Hebrews, you're in Egypt, you're worshiping the wrong gods, or you're allowing those other gods to be worshipped. That's not what it's about. It's about me. See that one? That one's done. See that one? Done. See that one? Done. I am the God.
And you know that the Hebrews are familiar with these Egyptian gods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they've been there for 400 years. They're going to be very familiar with it. So it would not fall on blind eyes or deaf ears. They knew the purpose. That's right. And we're going to talk about the last plague next week as we go through the Passover. That's what I got for you tonight. Y'all have a good one. Thank you.